time in the waiting, and I might do more than just Chapter 6 this time. So keep that in mind. Even though it will be titled Part 6, it will probably be longer. I would like to name an episode, but this is a long return. I might be rusty, so here I am on Chapter 6. We can see if we can finish this in one live stream. Could just title it Part 6 Finale. So, once again, I'll be rusty with the voices. I remember a couple of them, but I don't remember, like, Barda and Jasmine stuff. Probably even Doob. So, it might be inconsistent. I'm very sorry if it is. I think I was also changed up how I narrated it, being Maldron narrating it, but whatever you guys like, why not narrate it as Maldron and then use the other characters' voices. And there might be mistakes as I read along, but it should be fine. I do have the other books. You guys could decide if you want to see me read the other Dragons of Deltora books. Within this series, there are only 3 others, and let's get started with Chapter 6, The Upstart. In the Book of Dragons of Deltora, Dragon's Nest, Book 1 of Emily Rodda's Deltora series, Dragons of Deltora series, by Scholastic.
When Leaf, Barda, Jasmine, and Doom at last returned to the palace, they found it ablaze with light. The entrance hall was crowded with waiting people. Guards and palace workers alike had crept out of their rooms and gathered together as soon as the crystal left the palace. All had stayed awake to send strength to their king. The story told by the 6 guards who had run from the forge had only made them more determined to continue their watch. Leif's heart twisted with pain as he saw the gladness on their faces, heard their shouts of triumph and relief as he told them that the crystal was no more. The yellowed scrap of paper tucked away inside his jacket seemed to burn him. The words of the evil rhyme tormented him. As the bells began to ring and celebrations began, he slipped away to the new library. It was shadowy and seemed deserted, but a light glowed at the end of the room. From Joseph's private chamber, the old librarian was sitting at his work table with his back to the open door. The table was cluttered with paints and brushes, and a half-completed illustration for a new book lay at Joseph's hand. But the brushes were clean, and the jars of paint sealed. Plainly, Joseph had not been working, but had been sitting at the table out of habit. He, too, had been keeping watch. Leaf knocked gently on the edge of the door. Joseph turned stiffly in his chair, frowning slightly. When he saw who his visitor was, however, his face broke into a radiant smile. "Your Majesty," he cried, struggling to his feet. "I thought it was Path. How wonderful to see you safe. I know you would succeed."
"It was thanks to you that I dared to try,"
Leaf answered. He moved into the room and took the old man's outstretched hands, shaking them warmly. Then he hesitated, not quite knowing how to go on.
Joseph, there is something I need to..."
he began. "I know," Joseph broke in. "Ever since I first heard the bells, I have been thinking about it, and you will be surprised. I have decided that we should stay where we are. He saw Leaf's confusion and looked surprised.
Did you not mean to ask me about the library? Oh,
Did you not mean to ask me about the library, Your Majesty? He asked. About moving it back to the third floor, now that the menace has been removed?
oh yes, that too, Joseph. Of course,
said Leaf, hastily and quite untruthfully. It has taken a very long time to move all the books downstairs, Joseph said. I cannot bear the thought of carrying them all back again. Path tries her best, I dare say, but I fear she will never be half the assistant Radish was, and she chatters so. Leaf smiled despite his impatience. Path annoyed him too, though at the same time he felt rather sorry for her. Joseph was not much of a companion for a young girl. But when Ranish, Joseph's foster son, had left Dell and gone to the west to marry his true love, Marilyn, Path had timidly come forward and asked if she could replace him. Joseph had been pleased enough to have her. Path could read and write, which was sadly uncommon among the young people who had grown up under the rule of the Shadow Lord, and there had been no other applicants for the job. No wonder, thought Leaf. Everyone knew that Joseph was a fussy and demanding employer, but Path, a released prisoner from the Shadowlands, and the only surviving member of her family, had been anxious to find work as quickly as possible.
at least Path is hard-working, Joseph,
Leaf said soothingly.
and we could give you other help to move again. Are you sure about staying here? I know how much you missed the old library.
Joseph shrugged and grimaced. I have complained very much, I know, he said. I am too set in my ways. The fact is, Your Majesty, in the past weeks I have realized how isolated we were on the third floor. Here, we are in the thick of things. I think that the library will have many more visitors if it is placed where everyone can see it.
That is certainly true,
said Leaf heartily.
Well, then, that is settled. Now, Joseph, can you help me with some research I have to do about Deltora's past?
Why, certainly, beamed Joseph, rubbing his hands delightedly. How can I be of service?
First, I need to find out when a chief advisor called Drum lived.
Leaf said.
Do you know of him?
Joseph frowned. I know the name, I just cannot recall where I have seen it, he muttered in annoyance. But I will soon find it in the annals. Your Majesty, never fear. He began shuffling rapidly to the door. Leaf caught his arm.
Not now, Joseph. It is late, and we must both get some sleep. In the morning, perhaps. But here is something else to think about. Have you ever heard of the phrase, the Four Sisters?
Ah, Joseph's face brightened. Why, of course, the Four Sisters is an old jailous legend, one of the tenor birdsong tales. It is about four sisters who loved to sing together. They sang so sweetly that they annoyed a wicked sorcerer, who banished them to the four corners of the land. But still they sang to one another, though they were far apart. Leaf nodded gloomily. No doubt the Shadow Lord thought it amusing to name his sources of poison after four sweet sisters in an old Deltorian folk story, he thought. But this does not take me much further. Yes, the Four Sisters, a charming little story, as I recall, Joseph chattered on eagerly. I have not read it for years, but plan to do so very soon, to see if it is worthy of inclusion in Tales of Deltora, my new book, you know. I will look it up for you now. This time he would not be stopped. He hurried out of his room and This time he would not be stopped. He hurried out of the room and with Leaf following reluctantly, hastened to the shelf where the Deltora annals stood. Pulling the first thick volume from the shelf, he began leafing through it. Suddenly, Leaf could not bear it. He was bone-weary, and even to please Joseph he knew he could not stand and read an old folk tale now. Firmly he put his hand on the old man's to stop the restless flipping of pages.
Not now, Joseph, please,
he said.
I will look at the story in the...
His voice broke off as suddenly his stomach seemed to turn over. He was aware of Joseph looking at him in puzzlement. For a moment he could not speak. He stared down at the closely printed page on which his and Joseph's hands rested. Was it a coincidence? Could it be? What is it, Your Majesty? Joseph asked nervously. Slowly, Leaf straightened. He slipped his hand onto the inside jacket pocket and brought out the torn part of the map. Joseph?
Joseph?
He said, trying to control the excitement in his voice.
Before I show you this, you must promise me that you will speak of it to no one.
Joseph bit his lip. I know I have let my tongue run away with me in the past, Your Majesty, he mumbled. But I have learned my lesson, I swear it. Any secret you share with me now, I will take to my grave.
I hope it will not come to that,
said Leaf lightly, and still wondering if he was doing the right thing, he unfolded the map. Joseph's eyes widened. Why, how did you come by this? He exclaimed in excitement.
You recognize this paper?
Leaf asked quietly. Of course. Joseph cried, touching the map with reverent fingers. Doran the Dragon Lover's mapping. Styles and unmistakable. But that is a tragedy that only a fragment remains. Leaf stared at him in astonishment. This was not what he had been expecting the old man to say. But Doran the Dragon Lover, of course. That was why the markings on the fragment of map, all but the verse, had looked familiar. They were almost exactly like those on the map of dragon territories Joseph had shown him just before the meeting.
What a fool I was not to have seen it,
he murmured, but Joseph was not listening. His eyes had moved to the verse printed at the bottom of the paper.
Not only has it been torn, but someone has dared to scrawl their own words here,
he said furiously.
What is this drivel? Sisters four with poisoned breath bring to the land a long slow.
He stopped, his mouth gaping. He swallowed hard.
4 sisters,
he whispered.
The 4 sisters. Doran. Oh, how could I have forgotten? Why did I not think of it? How could I?
Frantically, he pulled the 5th volume of the Deltora Annals from the shelf. He flipped through the pages until he came to the Dragon Territory's map. Then he slowed and began turning the pages more carefully.
Joseph, what are you looking for?
Demanded Leaf in a fever of impatience. But still the old librarian did not answer. He was muttering to himself, completely wrapped up in his own thoughts. Now, where is it? He said, glancing rapidly at every page. It cannot be far now. Not far now. Aha! Recklessly, he pressed the book wide open and pointed triumphantly at the left-hand page, which was covered with Doran's writing. Here it is, he said. Doran's final entry in the annals. Read it.
Joseph, what?
Leaf began. Read it, roared Joseph, his eyes wild. Read all of it, you will see. This is the explorer Doran, writing in haste. Returned yesterday from my journey to seek the remaining dragons. In grief, I tell you that not one still flies Deltorian skies, and there's even more dreadful news. I now know why the enemy wanted the dragons destroyed. He had a plan that the dragons would not have tolerated. The 4 sisters. In the far-flung corners of the land I heard whispers of them. If what I have heard is true, the sisters of the north and east are already in place. The south and the west will surely be next, and I can guess where, if the rumors of the locations of the others are to be believed. Whoever reads my words, show them to the king if you can. The king wearing the belt of Deltora is Deltora's only salvation now. No one will listen to me. They think I am mad. I hurried to Del without pausing to eat, wash, or sleep. To these palace fools, with their soft hands and poor... I can't even see that. Polio fairs, I guess. It's weird. It looks all detached. Crap. Sorry. I look like a wild man. I must set out once more to seek proof of what I say. Another long journey, perhaps my last. For I fear the enemy is aware of me. If I do not return, seek me where the four sisters lurk. That was all on the opposite page. There was only a beautifully neat report of a palace dinner written by one of the librarians. Heading the list of people who attended was the name of Drum, the king's chief advisor. Leaf felt sick.
Doran's words are wild, I know.
No, Doran's words are wild, I know, said Joseph softly. It was said that his last hopeless dragon hunt had sent him mad with grief. There are many references to it. Later in the annals, the thought of it always grieved Radish.
Sorry if I pronounced the animals wrong. It's probably I'm being dumb.
Radish and me very much. Doran was a great man.
Indeed he was,
said Leaf, looking down at the hastily written words. His stomach was churning as he imagined the desperation of the man who had written them.
And he was not mad, Joseph, unless being the only one to see the truth is a kind of madness.
He pressed the book even further open and pointed to a few tiny jagged rags of paper clinging to the binding.
Look,
he said softly. That wasn't very soft. Joseph squinted short-sightedly, then recoiled. But it looks as if a page has been torn out here, he exclaimed. That is impossible. Once a thing was written into the annals, it was written. It was strictly forbidden for anything to be removed.
Drum would not have cared what was forbidden,
said Leaf.
He was following the Shadow Lord's orders. I think this is part of the missing page.
He put the fragment of Doran's map on top of the open book. It was clear at once that the thick yellowed paper of the map was the same as the paper used in the annals. Joseph stared aghast.
Doran drew a map on the page opposite his words to show where he thought the four sisters lurked.
He breathed.
And that page was torn out, no doubt very soon after he wrote it, too, because the back of the map is blank. But how did you know?
I only suspect...
Oh, it was him saying that?
I only suspected,
Leaf said.
When you were looking for the story of the four sisters, I realized that the paper of the map was the same as the paper always used in the annals. It could have been chance, but it was not.
Again he stared at the final lines of Doran's message. The enemy is aware of me. He swallowed.
You said that This was Doran's last entry in the Deltora annals.
"Oh yes," said Joseph unhappily. "He set out to find the four sisters of whom he speaks, but he never returned, and no one knew where to look for him. He was never seen again."
Moving into Chapter 7, called Dragon Hunt, on page 57. Alright. I'm wondering if I should stop here, because making shorter episodes might be... Oh, this is actually a very short chapter, though. This book's short in general. Yeah, this book is pretty short. What was that? Oh, okay. Yeah, so 57, there are... Okay, yeah. I mean, I was able to finish, the other one, and just, yeah, let's do 7. Why not?
A few days later, Leaf, Barda, and Jasmine set out from Dell on horseback.
Are there bugs in my room? What was that? But I felt something hit my leg. I know that a light bug, I think, got in here, but I don't know where he went.
Jasmine set out from Dell on horseback.
Let me adjust my mic.
Accompanied by a troop of palace guards, Leaf carried with him both the fragment found in the table frame and Joseph's precious copy of Doran's Dragon Territories map. As far as the people of the city knew, their king and his companions were going on their long-delayed tour of the kingdom, beginning in Broome, far to the east. Only Doom and Joseph knew their real purpose: to find the sister of the East at Dragon's Nest, to destroy it if they could, and perhaps through knowledge of it, to guess at the hiding places of the other 3 sisters.
Okay, who's saying this?
"I would give much to be going with you," Doom said as he farewelled them at the city gates. "But someone must stay to deal with things here." His mouth twisted in a familiar mocking smile.
Okay.
"And in any case, the 3 of you have done well enough without me in the past," he added. "I might spoil your luck."
I doubt it,
said Leaf. Clasping his hand warmly, he knew that it cost Doom to jest at this moment. They were now all convinced that the kingdom's future hung on the perilous quest. Hundreds of last-minute words of advice and warning must have been trembling on Doom's tongue, but he held them back. He knew that nothing he could say could help Leaf, Bada, and Jasmine now. He could only offer them his trust. At a shout from Bada, the guards moved off their heavy gray horses, breaking into a steady trot. With Cree swooping above them, the 3 companions followed, their lighter, faster mounts, carefully chosen by Bata, snorted with pleasure, puffing mist into the crisp dawn air. Leaf rode Honey, a spirited golden mare with a flowing white tail and mane. Bada rode His favorite, a strong, sweet-tempered chestnut called Bella. Jasmine's horse was the coal-black Swift. Leaf looked back, lifted his arm to return Doom's wave, and felt a pang of guilt.
Cheer up. What Doom does not know will not hurt him,
said Jasmine's voice beside him. Jasmine was grinning, relishing her freedom from the city. Her long black hair was already tingling in the breeze. Philly peeped out from under her jacket. His tiny paws were clutching her collar tightly, and his black eyes were very wide. Plainly, he found horse riding very alarming.
I am leading you into danger.
Leaf muttered. Maybe I should have made that sound more like a muttering.
And you are Doom's child. Quiet.
Jasmine snapped, her grin disappearing.
Like father, like daughter, have you ever known Doom to tell all the secrets, or to shrink from peril for any reason?
Leaf said nothing. The relationship between Jasmine and her father, that strange mixture of love, respect, and rivalry, was something he would never understand.
Besides,
Jasmine said in a milder tone,
Doom thinks we are going directly to Dragon's Nest. There we will be facing the Shadow Lord's evil. Nothing we could do on the way could be more dangerous than that.
Leaf was not so sure. He fought back a shudder as he remembered. Bada rode up on his left.
As soon as we are well out of sight of Dell, I will give the order to turn north,
he said in a low voice.
If you are still determined to do this, Leaf.
Leaf moistened his lips.
I am,
he said.
I feel it is the only thing that might help us. We need a weapon the Shadow Lord did not plan for. Powerful as the belt of Deltora is, it may not be enough.
Very well,
Barda said grimly.
North it is, to the Osmine Hills and the dragon.
A day and a half later they left their horses, and the confused, nervous guards in the grassy space sheltered by the first rocky slopes of the Osmine Hills. Barda had put his men under the orders of Rid, his second in command, telling them that he, Leaf, and Jasmine wished to walk into the hills alone to gather healing herbs.
Did you have to tell that story?
Hissed Jasmine, as the three companions trampled away, the guards staring after them.
Herbs now, Brid, and the others will think this trip to the Osmine Hills is my fault. Already most of them believe I am a witch. Most of them believe I am a witch, because I speak to birds and trees. Now, no doubt they think I need rare ingredients for my spells. Leaf and frickin' Jasmine are starting to blend. Sorry about that.
Barda shrugged.
All the better, he said. The important thing is that they do not suspect our real reason for being here.
Why can't we just tell them the truth?
Jasmine exclaimed.
They will find out soon enough, if we come back to them leading a golden dragon.
Leading it? It is more likely that we will be running from it in terror.
We have to keep the entrance to the underground world secret. Secret, Jasmine. You know that,
said Leaf.
And in any case, the gods would panic, and if they knew what we planned. Dragons have an evil reputation. If the Topaz Dragon does not rise and does agree to help us fight the Sister of the East, it must seem a complete surprise.
It will be a great surprise as far as I am concerned. If the dragon does anything but try to eat us, Bada snorted. That is, if it wakes up at all.
It will wake,
said Leaf, with the confidence he did not feel.
The presence of the belt of Deltora in its territory will make it stir. I am sure of it.
I am hoping that the belt will also protect us from the old friends, the Granus, Bada said. It has killed evil creatures before at the height of its power. Leaf remembered the sharp yellow teeth and stinking breath of the bloodthirsty game-playing creatures that hunted in packs over these hills. He did not relish the idea of becoming a prisoner of the Granus again, but he knew he could not depend on the belt to save him.
The Granus are wicked, but they are not creatures of the Shadow Lord,
he said in a low voice.
They are of Deltora. The belt may weaken them, but that is all I fear.
They had walked for an hour. The sun was high in the sky when Jasmine stopped abruptly, lifted her head, and seemed to listen.
What is it?
Leaf whispered. Jasmine murmured to Cree, and the black bird took flight. He wheeled overhead, and in moments was back on Jasmine's shoulder, squawking rapidly.
Granus,
Jasmine said briefly.
In a clearing not far over the next rise.
We must find a way around them, said Bada.
We cannot afford a fight now. Tell Cree.
He and Leaf froze as suddenly a wail of terror echoed through the hills.
If we are careful, the creatures will not hear us or smell us either,
Jasmine said calmly.
Oops. They are well occupied. They already have a prisoner.
Her companions stared at her in dismay. She met their eyes coolly.
It is a good fortune for us, she said. It would be well advised not to interfere. But we cannot knowingly leave someone at the mercy of the Granus.
Leaf hissed.
They will ask him their infernal riddles, and when he cannot answer them, they will start biting off his fingers and toes. They will kill him, Jasmine. Better that they kill a stranger than that they kill us,
Jasmine said, and Leaf knew that she was repeating a lesson she had learned only too well in the terror that was the forests of silence. For a moment he hesitated. He knew that he should not let his heart rule his head in this. But then the piteous cry came again,
followed by a scream of pure agony.
No.
Leaf breathed. He started forward.
Wait, I will go back and fetch the guards, said Barda, catching at his arm.
Leaf pulled himself free.
There is no time for that,
he muttered.
Come with me or not, as you like.
He began to run, and Jasmine and Barda followed, as he knew they would. Panting, the three scrambled up the next hill. When they reached the top, they flattened themselves on the ground and crawled forward until they could see the ground below. The other side of the hill fell away into a treacherous, pebbly slope, ending in a tumble of parched rocks. Beyond that was a grove of stunted trees, from which came the faint sounds of moaning and sobbing. Mingled with rough laughter, they began picking their way down the slope. Their progress was agonizingly slow. The sounds from the trees were growing louder and more disturbing. Leaf's heart was pounding. He was sickened by the thought of what was happening in the grove. As soon as he reached level ground and the trees were straight ahead, he reached for his sword.
Do not even think of charging in there, Leaf,
Barda whispered fiercely in his ear.
We will have no chance in hand-to-hand combat with 12 Granus. We must try to separate them.
Leaf gritted his teeth and nodded, desperate as he was to free the sobbing, groaning man within the grove. He knew that Barda was right.
Jasmine, you come with me,
Barda ordered.
We will try to lure some of them away, Leaf. There is probably a clearing in the center of the grove. Move around it and get behind the prisoner. Cut his bonds if you can, but keep out of sight until I give the signal.
They separated. Leaf crept around the trees until, through a gap, he saw movement. He moved in a little, and his stomach turned over as he suddenly gained a clear view of what was happening in the clearing. The Granus were gathered around someone who was sitting at the clearing's edge. Their shaggy gray bodies almost hid their victim. Leaf could not only see a mop of curly brown hair, hunched shoulders shrouded in a brown cloak, and a hand clutching an other hand from which bright red blood streamed.
Time for the next question.
The biggest of the Granus crackled.
Another question, another finger.
The others danced backwards, screaming with pleasure and snapping their jaws. Then Leif saw the sobbing victim clearly for the first time. He was sitting propped against a tree, bound in place by strong vines. From the waist up, he looked like a man, but from the waist down, he was covered in thick brown fur, and he had delicate pointed black hooves instead of feet. Astounded Leif realized that he was looking at a being he had thought was merely a legend. The Granus had captured a Capricorn. Moving on to Chapter 8, called Deadly Games, on page 66.
also a short chapter that would move on to 9, and it looks foggy in the game. We'll move the camera down and have my character face it. There we go. There's a blood stain as well. I mean, we can have that play out if you guys want. Oh, he was apparently dumb enough to attack the dude. Okay. Weird. Frickin' Maldron voice is starting to become my own voice. I had that when I was doing Carl Weasing's voice. I should do that for a video, but I got so used to the voice because I did it so much that, like, I became one with the voice. I'm not talking about the voice in Skyrim either. Let's get on with this next chapter. My voice is getting a little sore from doing this. This is probably one of the reasons I don't get to do this quite as often, is just how it kind of leaves my voice, unless it's like voices I can handle. Yeah, these chapters are pretty small, most of them. Yeah, look at this. The next 3, like, chapters or so yeah, they're all pretty small. What chapters in total? Let's see. I have read this book all the way through, by the way. Wondering. Okay, I think it ends at 19 chapters. Yeah, so we're at 8. 8 and 8 was 16. Okay, so... Okay, so there's 8, 9, 10. I think 11 chapters left. We look like we're almost halfway through the book. I think a couple chapters more and we're definitely halfway through. So, there's that. And I guess it also depends on how many pages there are, too. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I'm guessing that would be, I'm not sure what half of that would be, actually. Probably 80. Yeah, 80 something. Okay.
The Grennis pack was still shrieking and howling, taking advantage of the noise. Leaf slipped quietly through the trees, circling until he was directly behind the bound Capricorn. He took out his knife, lay down and wriggled through the undergrowth. Soon he was pressed against the back of the tree to which the Capricorn was tied. The tree trunk was broad and hid him well, but in turn he could not see nothing. The noise in the clearing was dying down. He knew he had to find out where all the granos were before trying to cut the vines. A straggling bush grew beside the tree. Leaf eased himself to his knees. He peered cautiously around the tree, using the sparse branches of the bush as a screen. The head Granus was squatting on the ground in front of its prisoner, arranging something in the dust. "Very well then, creature." It crackled after a moment, shuffling back. "Are you ready for your next question?" The Capricorn moaned and struggled vainly. Leaf saw that the Grannis had arranged some sticks in the dust to make a crude fish shape. "Here is a fish from our stream," said the Granus, flexing its thin, wiry fingers. "There are precious few of them, but this is one." The other Granus tittered. "Now," their leader said, "this fish is swimming to the left. If it goes on doing that, will it will escape our nets, and we do not want that, do we, friends? Oh no, chorused the other Granus, grinning hideously. So, creature, said the head Granus, by moving 3 sticks, no more, no less, you must make our fish turn around so it is swimming to the right. The Capricorn moaned, shaking his head helplessly. The Granus laughed and snapped their jaws, his mind racing. Leaf eased himself back behind the tree and began sawing at the vines. They were very tough, and there were 3 lengths knotted separately, so that if one broke, the others would still hold. He was sure that the Capricorn would feel what he was doing, and prayed that he would make no sign, but the prisoner was too panic-stricken. It seemed to notice anything. The low moaning did not change or falter. Don't give up so easily. Leaf heard the head Granus jeer.
Please, mumbled the Capricorn. I almost called him the Crappicon. Please.
One vine was almost cut through, leaving a few strands in place, so that the bond would not fall and alert the enemy. Leaf began on the next. You have till we count to 20 to solve the puzzle, said the Granus. As before, if you do not solve it, the penalty is 1 finger. Ready? Go. The other Granus began to chat. 20, 19, 18. Leaf risked another glimpse around the tree. The Capricorn was gaping wildly at the diagram. Clearly he did not have the faintest idea how to solve the puzzle. The Granus shouted and stamped. 14, 13. Grinning, their leader turned and began triumphantly conducting them. Their eyes were fixed on him. None of them are watching. Leaf thought. Now is our chance, but I will never cut these vines in time. He stared at the diagram, forcing himself to think. 10, 9, 8. Then suddenly Leaf saw the answer. Recklessly he leaned forward and whispered in the Capricorn's ear. The Capricorn jumped and cried out in shock. Luckily the Granus were too busy stamping and counting to notice. Do as I say, Leaf whispered urgently. Make haste. But the Capricorn, whimpering and trembling, seemed unable to move. 6, 5. Abandoning all caution, Leaf ducked out of cover, reached forward, and rearranged the sticks himself. 3, 2. Leaf jerked back behind the bush with a split second to spare. The lead Granus turned around, sharp yellow teeth grinning and snapping. 1. Oh.
Okay.
The pack howled in disappointment as they saw that the stickfish was now facing the right shallow. Grooves in the dust showed where the three moved sticks have been. Good puzzle. The head Granus lumbered forward, gnawing at one of its grimy yellow nails. It stared down at the diagram, then looked suspiciously at the prisoner, who was cringing against the tree trunk. "You cheated," it accused. "The penalty for cheating is 5 fingers."
No.
The Capricorn wailed, cradling his injured hand.
No, please, it wasn't my fault. It was...
He half turned to look behind him. Leaf stiffened. "Get on with the game," shouted one of the pack. "The game! The game!" chanted all the others furiously. The head Granus kicked the sticks aside, showering the Capricorn with dust. "The next puzzle will not be so easy, creature," it growled. Then it turned and slouched out of Leaf's sight. Leaf began cutting the second vine, every now and then peeping out at the clearing. The other Granus waited, muttering to one another in low voices. Then there was a sound from the trees at the other end of the clearing. They all swung around to look, and 2 went to investigate, quickly disappearing into the undergrowth. Leaf left a few strands of the second vine to hold it in place, and began on the third. This time the Capricorn felt it and whimpered. "Be quiet," whispered Leaf, sawing desperately.
I am releasing you.
He heard a chorus of rasping calls, and again peered through the bush. The Granus had all moved to the other end of the clearing, and were calling their invisible companions. When no answer came, 2 more lumbered into the trees. Jasmine and Barda are doing well, Leaf thought, but there were still 7 Granus in the clearing. 8, counting the leader. Too many, far too rough to fight. He returned to his work with new energy. When the third vine was almost cut through, he moved to look through the bush once more. The head Granus was returning with something clutched in its hand.
I have cut the vines almost through.
None. It's giving me difficulties. Read.
Oh wait, the cat breathed to the Capricorn. Stay absolutely still or you will break them and alert the Granus. But when I give the signal, leap up and run. I cannot run,
whimpered the prisoner.
They bit off my finger. I am in agony. There will be far worse pain for you if you stay here,
Leaf whispered furiously.
And keep your voice down.
The head Granus reached the tree and stood grinning at the cowering prisoner. "One of our visitors left his trinkets with us," he said with an evil grin, holding out a small wooden box, richly carved and painted in a complicated pattern of scarlet and gold. "All you have to do is open it. We humble Granus have never found the trick. but I am sure a fine, clever creature like you can do it with ease. He leaned forward and tossed the box into the Capricorn's lap. "No!" screamed the Capricorn, throwing himself violently to one side. The weakened vines snapped and fell in a tangled heap into the dust. The Granus roared in surprise and anger. The Capricorn clawed at the bush that was Leaf's shelter, bending and breaking the flimsy branches. "Save me!" he screamed. "Save me!" Leaf tried to scramble back, but the Capricorn caught his cloak and held it fast, sobbing and crying. "Enemy!" howled the Granus. It hurled itself forward, snapping and snarling. In dismay, Leaf felt weary fingers fasten on his ankle. He was jerked backwards with such tremendous force that he could not do anything to save himself. The next moment he was lying dazed in the clearing, with the hot, foul breath of the Granus in his face, and the great weight of its body on his chest, pinning down his arms. The rest of the pack had come running and now stood in a tight circle around their leader and his captive. Two of them had seized the Capricorn, who sagged motionless between them. His head hung down so that Leaf could see the small horns beneath his curly hair. His eyes were closed. The head Granus bent lower, its wet black nose snuffling in Leaf's face, its tiny eyes burning with fury. "I have seen you before," it snarled. "You are the one who calls himself king, the one who has made fools of us before. Well, you will never make fools of us again, king." It bared its sharp yellow teeth. "It is going to kill me here and now," Leaf thought. His numbed fingers tightened on the belt at his waist. He focused his mind on it, and with all his strength called on the power of the gems. "Help me." The Granus jerked back as if it had been stung. It glared at Leaf for a moment, then its eyes narrowed. "Now I know how you escaped us the first time," it hissed. "You cheated. You are carrying powerful magic, but you will not escape again. This time you are alone, and it is 12 against 1. No talisman can save you. Only then did Leaf think again of Jasmine and Barda. Were they safe? Were they even now watching from the trees, trying to think of a way to rescue him? "Stay back," he begged them silently. "There are still too many of them. I insisted on coming here. Now I must pay the penalty. But while you live, there is a chance that the belt of Deltora at least can be saved." The other Granus shuffled. "4 of the pack went into the trees and did not come back," one growled nervously. "If this king has enchanted them..." Their leader looked up with a snarl. "His sorcery does not frighten me," it snapped. "Watch me tear out his throat." Then, abruptly, its eyes widened in alarm. "Beware!" it roared. "Enemies behind you!" But already 2 of the shaggy beasts, the 2 that held the Capricorn, were falling to their knees, mortally wounded. dark blood dripping from their weapons. Jasmine and Bada leaped back and faced the rest. "Kill them!" roared the Granus leader. "Save them! Help me!" The belt grew hot under Leaf's hands. There was a tearing crash in the distance, and suddenly the sky overhead was filled with birds. Tens of thousands of birds. The hills echoed with their panicking cries, and the sound of their frantically beating wings. The other Granus howled and covered their faces, but their leader did not falter. "Die, sorcerer!" It hissed. It bared its dripping teeth again, its lips drawn back too far that Leaf could see its black gums. The birds scattered. The sky darkened. There was a thundering roar. Something huge plunged downward. The Granus leader looked up and screamed. Leaf caught a terrifying glimpse of vast golden claws, heard the beating of mighty wings, and the Granus was plucked, shrieking up into the sky. We move on to the chapter 9, called The Golden Eye, on page 76. It is also not a very long chapter, as it goes for 10 pages. A lot of these seem to go for 10 pages. This one goes for 9. Yeah, they're pretty short, so not a problem. I think 2 more chapters. Let's see. I think 2 more chapters, and I'll be halfway through the book. So chapter 9 will be The Golden Eye. I'm trying to remember, so it said there were, I think it said there were 19 chapters. Pretty sure. Yeah, 19 chapters. Okay, yeah, we're close to halfway. 2 more chapters and we should be halfway. Or maybe even halfway through the second chapter is technically halfway. I don't know. But we got a lot of progress today. Let me stop doing the frickin' Maldron voice. I hope you guys enjoyed. We made it to chapter 9. I will remember that for next time. And we'll do that on the next episode, the next stream. Of course, I will be starting off a couple other books. I did finish my first read-along, which was the Beastars Volume 1. I finished that whole book in one stream. We will get to books like The Witcher, the Elric book, the rest of The Hobbit, of course, and I want to get into Red Branch, and of course Dune too, which we have been doing. I did the first chapter of. So I hope to see you guys next time. I'll be using Elden Ring's backgrounds for a lot of these, just for a setting and some atmospheric music. But I hope you guys enjoyed nonetheless. And if you did, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments below, and hit the bell if you did subscribe and like what you watched here. Hit the bell for notifications to keep up to date with the latest content and our videos to come up on the channel. And look forward to more read-alongs in the future. I will have plenty of read-alongs. I will also want to move on to some Tom Clancy stuff and potentially later the Metro book. So I will see you guys next time. And have a nice, awesome day. It's good to return.